let's continue with that conversation about the coalition's shadow ministry. Now, I've already spoken about the women who were dumped and demoted, but let's return to this bad decision over Dave Sharma. I mean, one of the coalition's sharpest minds and brightest figures. He's the former Australian ambassador to Israel. He's got business, diplomatic and political experience, not to mention his score of 100 back when he did the HSE. Yet instead of being given a prominent portfolio, Susan Lee appointed him the Shadow Assistant Minister for Competition, Charities and Treasury. He would have been better, as we just spoke about, in Foreign Affairs. He's not even in Shadow Cabinet. And he's on the same level as Giselle Kaptarian, who hasn't even won the seat of Bradfield against a Teal. The recount is still going on. And Dave Sharma, who I'm sure will be blushing from that introduction, joins me now. Dave, good to see you again.
Hello, Sharri.
Look, it's impossible to say this is a good shadow cabinet. It's not based on merit, but on politics. That's disappointing, isn't it?
Look, I respectfully, I don't agree. Putting together a shadow cabinet is not an easy thing to do. You've got to balance, state, gender, ideology in many respects to put forward the most diverse and competent and capable cabinet you can. And of course, there are always going to be people that are disappointed. There are always going to be decisions you can second guess or individual portfolios that you could say should go on to one person or another. But I think in the circumstances and given the pool of people she had to draw from, Susan Lee has done a good job.
I mean, the issue is that the coalition needs the best possible team to try win back more than 30 seats. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but it must surely be frustrating for you personally or for those who support you, knowing that you have so much to contribute and knowing that you have the ability to do so, but again, you're not being given the responsibility.
Well, look, I'm privileged to be a senator for New South Wales. It means I can speak on any number of issues, as I'm sure we will tonight. Yes. I'm looking forward to getting into the portfolio of competition and charities, because I do think the lack of competition in the Australian economy has been not only a contributor to our cost of living crisis, but a huge drag on productivity, a huge burden on households. It's been to the detriment of workers, and ultimately it's to the detriment of our nation. So I think it's a substantial area of policy, and I'm keen to get my teeth stuck into it.
All right, well, let's speak about one of the areas of your expertise, foreign policy. I read an excellent Wall Street Journal editorial today which summarises the difficulties Trump is dealing with on the international stage. And it says he faces crucial decisions on Russia, Iran and China. Those adversaries are increasingly working together against American interests. And it asks, will the president send a message of deterrence or weakness? Now, Dave, I mean, Trump seemed to think that he himself, being in the position of president, would be enough of a deterrence, but that's not what's eventuated.
No, I think the test is really looming large now, Sharri. Will Trump back up his rhetoric and his stated policies with actions? I mean, with the Ukraine war, he first said it would be finished within a day. No one really took him at his word for that. But then he said within 100 days. Well, 100 days passed, I think, about 30 days ago now. And it's clear that, to me at least, that Russia and President Putin are not taking US proposals for a ceasefire seriously. They just unleashed one of their largest barrages in Kiev, Ukraine's capital, over the last 3 days, involving cruise missiles, drones and other lethal weaponry. They do not seem interested in talks. Of course, Zelensky agreed to go in person to talks in Istanbul 2 weeks ago. Putin was a no-show. He didn't intend to go along. So I think on that file, but also on the Iran nuclear file, people are sort of watching with bated breath to see what happens if the talks break down. What pressures will the US president bring to bear on Iran to make sure that they return to the negotiating table or participate in negotiations in good faith? So I think, increasingly the credibility of American power, but also the Trump administration is being tested here.
You mentioned the aerial onslaught from Russia this week, and there's also reports that Russia's preparing a big summer attack against Ukraine. So Trump's going to have to decide whether to fund Ukraine's ability to rearm, or else Putin will take Ukraine and then will be emboldened. And then there's the question of what message that would send to Beijing. David, just want to ask you before you go about the breaking news reports in the New York Times today that US intelligence believes Israel could be preparing to carry out an attack on Iran. The New York Times is reporting as the Trump administration tries to negotiate a nuclear deal with Iran, Netanyahu has been threatening to upend the talks by striking Iran's main nuclear enrichment facilities. And they say this is according to officials briefed on the situation. Now, Dave, we don't know if these reports are true, but I mean, you can see really that the Israeli government has been frustrated that Trump hasn't acted in a stronger way to slow down or stop the Iranian nuclear program up until this point.
Well, look, Israel has now conducted 2 sets of strikes against Iran over the past 6 to 9 months, both of which were largely directed at disabling Iran's air defences and making it more vulnerable to future attacks, but also sending a clear message that Israel had the capability to carry out these attacks. So I think the message has been sent already, and it's a regular part of Israel planning exercises to consider all scenarios, including this one, and what they would do, what a military option against Iran's nuclear enrichment facilities would look like. Now, I don't wish to see that come about. I'm sure the US president doesn't wish to see it come about either. But they are watching these negotiations quite closely. I think the US-Iran talks are now in their 4th or 5th round. And undoubtedly there are elements of concern within Israel about whether an agreement will be reached and what level of uranium enrichment capability and stockpiles, if any, such an agreement will allow.
All right, we'll keep on that evolving story. Dave Sharma, really appreciate your time. Thank you.